Imposter syndrome. You may have had that feeling when you've got a new job, when you're dating someone who is above your usual standards. Essentially, whenever you're in a situation that feels new, challenging, uncomfortable in some ways, maybe you feel more seen, and you start having thoughts coming up about self-doubt. Am I good enough? I don't think I'm meant to be here. The mistake we really make in this situation is judging the fact that we feel like an imposter. Thinking that the fact we feel like an imposter shows that we are an imposter. Just because we have these feelings, these thoughts, these self-doubts about ourselves, because we're in a new situation, because we're in a growth scenario, we think that means something about us. But I would like you to try and carry a longer term picture. Let's say, what would the old version of you say about you now by taking on this challenge, by doing something out of your comfort zone? I'm here to reassure you that if you feel like an imposter in this early stage, the first 1 to 2 years of running my business, even now, I still feel like an imposter some days, even with evidence. I'm telling you now that you don't need to judge feeling like an imposter just because you have an expectation that you see other people's external experience, you see them doing something that seems really easy, they seem confident, they seem self-assured. You have no idea what that person is feeling on the inside. And that's where we start to go wrong. But let's say we talk about these guys who have built up tons of evidence, they've had tons of experience, and they still feel like an imposter. Maybe this is you. Maybe you've been in your job now 6, 5 years, however long. You've done something for a while, but you still feel the same self-doubt. What can we do to lessen the impacts of imposter syndrome? I think one thing, and I can't say for sure where these guys, but I can speak for myself, where we go wrong, is we seek validation and confirmation that we're good enough from both external and internal situations. So what I mean by this, I'm going to give you an example. Let's say in my business, where I start to go wrong and start to feel like an imposter is I base my worth and my confidence and my sense of self on getting external results. That could be campaigns going well. That could be positive feedback from clients. But there's also a deeper level when we start to have self-doubts, negative thoughts, when we start to have emotions that are uncomfortable. That can be when we feel even more like an imposter. But we only feel like an imposter when we allow ourselves to define ourselves based on external validation and confirmation. So if you're someone who has a good result with a client, you suddenly feel good internally, you start having positive thoughts. But then on the days when it's a bit slower, when things aren't going your way, you're going to be like this little wave we have here. You're going to be up and down depending on external results. So that is where we're seeking validation, confirmation that we're good enough from external things. And that also includes our emotions. There are going to be days where you hop out of bed, you feel amazing. On those days, maybe you don't have any imposter syndrome. But on the days when you doubt yourself, when you wake up feeling negative, that's when you feel like that imposter. You doubt yourself massively. You don't feel certain of achieving outcomes. We want this validation to tell us that we're good enough. But the problem is, and the trap that I don't know for sure, I'd like to speak to them, the trap that these guys maybe fall into, and maybe you do as well, and why imposter syndrome can continue even after we've built up a lot of evidence, is we allow ourselves to base our self-worth on things that fluctuate, that change, that come and go day to day. So I want to pick out a couple bits, a couple things that might be helpful for you, distinguishing between what we feel and judgments. So I can feel a sense of anxiety, a sense of stress. Maybe that comes along with thoughts of, I'm not good enough. But That's not a problem by itself. It's not a problem just to feel anxious or nervous. It is the judgment on top of that that writes a story about what we're feeling internally, and we make that our identity. So if I tell myself, which I did for many years, that I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling stressed, this means I'm not comfortable in this situation, or this means something about me. What has really changed in my life more recently with dealing with things like imposter syndrome is understanding that the feelings are going to come up, that I'm a human being. You're a human being too. Your feelings are going to come and they're going to go. What you need to do is separate the thoughts, the feelings, from the judgments and stories you'll tell yourself about what that means. So if we go into this promotion example, that's a really common example where imposter syndrome will come up for guys. If we look at this example, maybe you start questioning yourself, maybe thoughts are going on, then you feel some anxiety in your body. But if you're just like, oh, one day I'm feeling like this, no worries, I'm gonna carry on. I'm gonna focus on what I can control on this situation, improving my inputs, my process, and trying to let go of this story that these feelings of doubt show that you're not meant to be there, because they may come up anyway. It doesn't have a massive impact if we don't trust every one of our thoughts and feelings. We can still acknowledge them, but it's a different thing when we start to layer this story about who we are as a person, that we're not good enough, that we're an imposter, that we're not meant to be here on top of that. So I'd like you to, as an alternative, what can we do instead of feel like an imposter and base all our worth on external things and feelings and thoughts? What you can do instead is try and bring your attention to taking the next best action. So in a maze, there's always going to be one route which gets us to the center the fastest, the easiest way to do it. And that's something you can do to start reclaiming your power rather than just being controlled by thoughts and feelings and believing the story that comes with that. Is asking yourself at work, what's the next best action that is going to make sense to me, that's going to move me in the right direction, that's going to build my experience, build a level of certainty, and focus on taking that next action with full commitment, rather than, if we go back to the previous example, where we're basing our worth on external things that we can't really control. I'd love to be able to control my advertising campaigns and know exactly what's going to happen, but I can't. I can, but what I can do is focus on the next best action. Am I doing things logically? Am I being honest with my clients? Am I being disciplined in the work I'm doing? So just focusing much more on what we can control. And this is a metaphor I like to go back to because it's really helpful for me. Let's say you're climbing a mountain. At the top of the mountain is this version of you that feels confident. You feel in control. You're never really feeling like that much of an imposter. In terms of your next step, you have to focus on what is the next best action, but also have a belief that over time you're gonna develop yourself and come to a stage where eventually imposter syndrome is not really going to have an impact. It's not going to influence you. And the reason you do that is because there are going to be difficult times when you've got negative thoughts coming up. All these feelings associated with imposter syndrome are going to become very strong. So you need to have a level of focus on the future and a belief that, right, it may be difficult in this moment, but I am focusing on the small next steps to overcome this, to not have it influence my life. And that's the thing. I think that's where so many of us go wrong. I do think when we experience the feelings and emotions, thoughts associated with imposter syndrome, so often we want to push it away. But really, I think it's just a sign we're growing, we're moving in the right direction. So what I like to have is this belief over time, by being consistent, taking the right actions, I am going to overcome imposter syndrome. It's not going to influence my life. It doesn't really matter if it's still there or not, as long as it doesn't control my behavior. That's the main thing. And then on this right hand side here, I would bring your attention to what is the small next step. So maybe that's something like focusing your energy on what you can control in a situation. Can you be more honest? Can you take an action that is going to help in your job, that's going to help you build experience? Whatever it is, having at the back of your mind the belief that you're on this upward trajectory, but just focusing on the next step. Can I still show up for my work and do a good job? Can I show up for this date even when I have these thoughts of doubting myself and still take action? And that's been one of the biggest shifts in my life, just being less controlled by these passing thoughts, passing emotions, still focusing on what is the next best action, going ahead with it. And overall, that is something for me when I used to feel like an imposter. Maybe I still have the same anxiety, some same thoughts certain days, but I just get on with what is important to me. And then suddenly you're functioning as a person who externally looks very confident. And I think this is the big difference between people who build true confidence and people who feel like imposters and let that control them. Because to be honest, I think it's just a sign you're growing, you're challenging yourself, and it's also about bringing it back to the results. So we're going to do a very quick recap of everything we've said. So the mistake many of us fall into is trying to run away from imposter syndrome, trying to jump from a place where we're not confident to a place where we suddenly feel that we know what we're doing without putting in the necessary reps and work. That is the mistake we make. And I would like you to ask, looking at your situation now where you feel like an imposter, what would the old version of you say? Would they be quite proud of you? They probably would have some level of pride, because I imagine 9 times out of 10 you're going to be in a situation that does challenge you now. But what about these guys who have achieved all these things, still doubt themselves? I think, like many of us, they seek external validation and confirmation that suddenly I'm good enough, I'm no longer an imposter. But waiting for that stage is part of the problem. It's never going to come. That's because we attach to our feelings and we make judgments about our feelings, stories that come up from thoughts and feelings, that I am an imposter. I identify as an imposter. I don't feel internally always amazing. I don't feel certain. So I judge myself as someone who is an imposter, who isn't meant to be there. But the story is often the problem, not the feelings and thoughts themselves. So what can we focus on instead? We focus on taking the next best action in our lives. This could be aligned with things like our values. And your focus, again, should be on the next step. What can I do next? What is the next wise action? How can I move forward in spite of these feelings? How can I choose not to write a story and have a belief over time things are going to get better? I hope that helped. See you on the next one. Goodbye.